this evening marks the beginning of Splice Season 3. Yes. Very, very exciting. Glad it's still going very, very strong. It's the start of our third year together as a collective. Those of you who've been with us since the start, thank you. Those of you who are maybe just coming for the first or second time, thank you. We have another incredible season lined up, but this is only due to you, as you know, the audience, who gives Splice its spirit and energy to continue this mutual work, this mutual labor. We know it's labor to get here and to attend, and so we appreciate it. Tonight we have the honor of seeing two of the greatest living anti-colonial poets of our time. Yeah, no, just drop it. Edgar Garcia and Jose Luis Moctezuma. Given the focus of their work, it might seem strange to quote a common marketing mantra in capitalist advertising. Right time, right place, right message. But here we are, inside that white whale, struggling in some way or another to understand the systems of power we are subjected to every single day, dragging our bodies to difficult jobs in order to survive, and for the masses of the world, barely at that. As George Oppen writes in his poem Leviathan, even the verse begins to eat away in the acid. Though their bases are distinct, the soil out of which Garcia and Moctezuma grow their poetics is the same extra terra, the idea that other worlds are possible. Each poet tracks our current invasive politic, verdantly overtaking the violence of colonial capital with an open, permeable language. From Oppen's Leviathan again. We must talk now. Welcome to the belly of the beast, y'all. This is Splice Season 3. Right time, right place, right message. Here to introduce our first poet, Edgar Garcia, we have Rodrigo Toscano.
All right. I'm going to read Edgar's his sort of official bio, and then I'm going to do my introduction. Hang on.
We're doing that?
Short.
Too short? All right.
No. All right. So Edgar Garcia was born in California to a family of Central American extraction. He earned a BA from the University of California, Berkeley, and a PhD from Yale University. He is Associate Professor of English at the University of Chicago and works in the fields of indigenous and Latinx studies, American literature, poetry and poetics, and environmental criticism. He also teaches in the Department of Creative Writing, where he serves as Director of Undergraduate Studies. Garcia's collection of poems and anthropological essays, Skins of Columbus, A Dream Ethnography, won the 2018 Friends Modern Poets Series Award. He's also co-editor of American Literature in the World, an anthology from Anne Bradstreet to Octavia Butler, Infinite Regress from Bomgia Books. His other books include a scholarly monograph, Signs of the Americas, a poetics of pictography, hieroglyphs, and quipu, and a collection of essays, Emergency, Reading the Popol Vuh in a Time of Crisis. His poems and translations have appeared, among many other places, in Antioch Review, Berkeley Poetry, Jacket 2, Mandorla, and the anthology The Alteration of Science, recent Chilean poetry by Diálogos Press. And his essays on poetry and related topics have appeared in Chicago Review, Tupelo, and other places. Since 2022, he is the guest editor-in-chief of Fence magazine. Edgar Garcia is a cross-civilizational thinker and poet. And what does it mean to not be a cross-civilizational thinker? By now, some variety of nationalist, whether one likes it or not, usually in the mode of sub-cultural nationalist tinkerer in poetics. That is to say, if one doesn't consciously meddle with the foundational, philosophic, cultural, aesthetic, political, economic priors of one's poetics, then someone else is doing it for you. So, Garcia's poetic at times sounds like a post-nationalist, at other times a pre-nationalist. But his poetics, to my mind, is neither of those. Rather, his poetics from the outset rejects the linear chronologies from which all nationalist notions of culture making get their boost. And more specifically, that someone else is doing it for you is none other than the Anglo-Calvinist capitalist substrate that promises a soft landing for so-called BIPOC voices, reducing actual accomplishments like the Ibero-Indigeno-Africano cultural landscape that makes up the Americas into institutional baubles like Latinx. That's not to even mention that Anglosphere's hostility towards Arabic and Judaic substrates of Iberian thought itself. Anybody who's lucky enough to know Edgar in person will attest to the whirlwind of cross-civilizational takes he has on everything from history to the way people interact on the daily. And the concentrated form of those takes is best understood through his reformulation of myths and the timescapes that those myths work through. He is a counter-fabulist fabulist. Dialoguing with Edgar, along with Jose Luis, has been one of the wildest rides I've ever been on. Edgar is resistant and resilient to all official ideological tour guides to the greater Americas, be they Marxist historical materialism, EU brand new historicism, Gaullist republicanism, rehashed Spenglerian jivery, and even Jose Marti perspectivism. Garcia is instead a cosmo-visionary cross-civilizational poet. His poetics evinces a critical vigor and creative imagination that's hard to match. Experimental here doesn't just mean moving things around on the page in a wild way or acting weird on the mic. Rather, his poetics is a species of radical anthropological research meant to ground us in ungroundability itself. There has to be rare winds to think about. There has to be a sun not quite like yesterday's. There has to be augural speakers across time, hundreds of years in the past, but also in the future. No referent is ever a whatever in Edgar's poetic. All plot points take on significance. I remember once we were talking about the Popol Vuh, a Mayan text that he's well known for stimulating to speak to our present moment through his book Emergence, and I asked him, okay, well, we have those Mesoamerican gods, and then there's the Greco-Roman gods, the Near East gods. Which ones do you think we should take seriously? And Edgar, they're all real. I believe in all of them. I let out a gasp, starting with the labial frictive. You see, for him, it's what you make out of all those things, all the substrates of your civilizational detritus, which you can barely stand it, but must be stood on in new ways. And that's a kind of experimentalism that's not, let's say, the most common in US poetics. But actually here, in New Orleans, we have poets tackling the problematic of late empire decay from all sides, from interpersonal cross-cultural poetries to fully exteriorized public poetries. The pot is about to overboil. We can feel it coming week after week. Apocalypticisms are closing in from all sides. We need not only escape routes, but effective methods for making a stand. And so, we're ready here tonight for the full dose of Edgar's going to drop on us tonight. Let's give a warm Splice welcome for Edgar Garcia.
That intro was a gift, but it reminds me of Mause's idea about a gift, which is a gift is a debt, right? A debt incurred. So now you created a huge debt for me. But thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
We should get on that mic.
Yeah, all right. I'm going to read from a collection of translations, adaptations, critical, creative reworkings of the mid-16th century Cantares Mexicanos, which is an anthology of songs which were put to paper after the arrival and conquest of the Spaniards. They are in Nahua, the indigenous language of central Mexico, but By the time they're collected, they're already looking back to a time that no longer exists, right? So just like the Confucian odes, they're a mix of fantasy, memory, wish, desire, remembrance, all coming together in the confluence of the colonial moment of the mid-16th century, mid to late 16th century, 1550s to 1580s. And this is me putting myself in that world. Cantar es cantar, tar es cantar es cantar, tar can es cantar, cantar es cantar es cantar es cantar, cantares, cantares. Last night, I dreamt that I was employed as a suicide prevention specialist in ancient Mesoamerica. We had no phones then, so no hotline to call or anything like that. I held these gatherings going place to place for people to tell me their stories and songs and stories and songs about others. If anything seemed amiss with someone's emotional ideation, we would bring them into crafts therapy of various kinds, employing them meaningfully. Sometimes I would bring them to help me with my work. In my dream, depression, anxiety, and suicide were pervasive in the gritty and unforgiving world of ancient times. I stayed so busy with my job. I knew it was a dream because in a few hours I saw Claude Lévi-Strauss in his hotel room in Brazil, anxious about having to go out and do actual field work in the Amazon and just hating it. He hated that he would have to go out there and the discomfort of all that. He just wanted to stay in his hotel room, smoke, write, sleep, and say he'd gone out. Then I could see that he was writing to his mother. He seemed so full of familiar human folly. I wanted to take him with me to help me with my work. I kept saying to myself, so human, all too human. I will die if I don't wake up here. I know that residue of something I've read or heard, but it is not coughed up, not safe. Night on the water, fish eyes roil out to ribs that float over a faded pale page. They've come out of the water with a taste from my talk. Today, again, is a day to help the wet half-torsos. Cantares 1, Crisis. Is there dragon fruit or humming jade for little birds in shady colonnades? Is there any multitude for the displaced and dead retinues, subdued like mountain ruins in diamond lakes, they say? It sort of hurts to speak. I think I have a sore throat. You're probably sick. Mask up if you go out. I see them thus in masks, prattling hummingbirds, barking geese, quetzals in the guise of old lords, whippoorwills in white sheets. They cover the city in search of things to eat. 2, green places. Look at me descend into holy total entertainment, places of screeching fun, speech overhead, not earth's green dominion. Here no creature gets it wrong, no intellectual amends to perpend in all day long. Perfection is clay in the end, not what the plow did. Ancient landscapes hardly exist any longer. They've retreated to a future time. History comes at you that way in a world made by the hands and minds of countless bodies now dead, ghostly heralds, and it's not just the humans. Our sidewalks are made of mineralized animal bone. The air is the side carbon dioxide of many trees long gone. When the Cantares were put to paper in the mid-16th century in colonial New Spain, their world, the world of Mexicas, Texcocans, Tlaxcalans, Huexotzincos, Azcapotzalcans, and others, Many dead, who took with them the knowledge of their world, must have felt absent from their cities, whose streets were then an emotional compression of memory, forgetting, imagination, and wish. Some called to the old gods, others to the new, or even both at once, while still others addressed the crisis directly with acts of magic. The songs themselves, the cantares, were understood in this spectrum of liability. Those who helped to circulate them, singers and the patrons of singers, could be imprisoned or killed for promulgating the wrong gods and the wrong magic. The songs were as potent with the touch of these gods as this magic, as an idol, ceremonial bundle, or ritual act. They were like ghosts uprooted, waiting to be planted again. There was a lot of war in ancient Mesoamerica. There was war, there was objection to war, and this is a song from a conscientious objector. 6, conscientious objector. Your magnificence I can barely address in my shallow loneliness. How thin what I might then expect from you is, famous Tetlapatsekatzenitsing. You were called to this earth a while to live in a child's peace, but then the fashions dressed you up, and well you wore the war skirt and sash. But the bare truth is there's war, always war, with its rage and hate, modifying even how friends congregate. I saw you, Tetlapatsekatzenitsing, in troubled straits, and speaking straight, I said less than manly things. To hell with empire and its overgrowth, to hell with the flowers that conurbate, to hell with the south and east, God damn them that injunct our ease with commands, to obtain without cause, to siege, to bring bloody rain on our neighbors' walls. You wanted all that, but not for itself. The problem is, though war we might hate, it's in war we learn who to celebrate. Hence this, Tetlapatsekatzenitsing. Number 8. They get a little political. A politician has little to do when gone are the old retinues. The hairdresser has little to fix when gone are the katop tricks. How could one lead or perceive a people who no longer see themselves in the mirror, let alone see themselves in each other? Would that I could fetch old glass shattered by the new rubrics. I'd put it back together at last, and this be called iconoclastic. Yes, we've got new life in Christ, precious life, a blessing of the homogenists. To put our memories back in order would break the spell of those one-sayers. Would that I could fetch old shards, I'd take them to the underworld and show them to the princes there, sleeping shattered to converse. Some of them are not political. It is human emotion. These are the emo poems. Number 9. Truest regrets, I'm always upset. Apologies, I'm perpetually surly. I try to help myself, and yet no luck reaches me, particularly. I don't necessarily want for riches. I wail and it's ruefully wretched. It's time to die, I worry. I may be then again with old friends, happy, fortunate in their company. Here I hurry to scarcely depend on the cheap will of inane functionaries. I've neither the spirit nor the friends. I wail and it's timidly out of tune. It's time I die, I think. Let no one's heart be hurt to hear it. My blues aren't specially unique. I caught a bad wind somewhere in my orbits. Now I'm just another planet oblique. Let me borrow your ears for just a few moments. Number 14. This one changes the meter a bit, adopting a new metrical structure based on the change in rhythmic pattern within the manuscript itself. Maybe you'll hear about it. Number 14. Citadel siege there, caught like a bird there. Quickly the feather trips across the drum's beating leather. Why sing? Why bother? Why remember? It's a terrible time for all the households, and only the kids still live in ritual vaguely. Whose painting is that? That one there. Ask the people why a child could see such color. Green shade of live water, ochre of old honey, while we walk in dim downpours. Lightning misses us like this, we can scarcely reminisce. Some say that, I say this. Number 21, another emo poem. The trees still bloom, companions still groom themselves to meet in brightly lit rooms. Why then all my gloominess? The jaguar still prowls and javelins howl like eagles on chalky athletic fields. Why then all my gloominess? I don't know, but it is as clear as a fish out of water grasping for its turquoise. I know it's said, war flowers wither when they're not fed their dead soldiers, and now there's peace, supposedly peace. Our importunate warriors have all left this place. Why then all my gloominess? This one's about war. 24. An eagle in its nest is the field rat's rest. This is like a bunch of like analects. An eagle in its nest is the field rat's rest. The jaguar reclined as peace enshrined. The second they wake, the world's peace flakes and falls like a hail of disconsolate nails. Let the shields of rats and kleptocrats be like thin huds under jagged floods. The restive rain of old warrior trains be born again by eagles awakened and jaguars perplexed to see annexed their fields of maize and their old honorable ways. An eagle in its nest is the field rat's rest, and peace enshrined is just a jaguar reclined. Watch the banners fan, the fleeing chalkans or the amakem, now broken, now hemmed, while the dust of shields, shattered in elan, covers them from skullcap to heels. Oh yeah, this one. Yeah, this one's good. 25. The name here, Yoyotzin, is one of two names for the great philosopher king, Netzahualcoyotl. So when I'm saying Yoyotzin, I'm also referring to Netzahualcoyotl. Yoyotzin, this ode is for you, although it won't bring you back. It's like Rimbaud said, forget coming back. Always arriving, you'll go everywhere. What I remember of you, Yoyotzin, were your circling rings of song, your trefoil over cups at nightfall, never moiled, even when they said, you wronged Kwakwawatsin, sending him to battle such that his bride, light in your eyes, would be available. Even then you were hungry, Netzahualcoyotl, and full of heart, Yoyotzin, 2 men, 1 king. If your exile teaches us anything, it's the correlative of arrival and departure, always departing. You learned how to live. You lived in perpresture. Today, I'll say it, though we live in deep censure. Did a poem come to mind when the Mexica realigned to take your home, Texcoco, your belvederes, Your squares, exquisitely designed hectares. Topoi, I ask, because the Christians now strip our fields of the legislative hum that sprouted Taraxacum not long ago, the moats whose modicum of good governance could still yield fine poems, your songs, not long ago. Is there anything you wrote then to help us now? Oh, Netzahualcoyote. Sparing you the long essays that all science about. I don't want to come up here and give a talk. This book also has many long essays to contextualize what's going on. Oh yeah, easy. 31. I'll say it first, these songs are worth a flower in the purse, a verse to heaven's universe, made for the earth from its grim course, and of course adorned with what is interspersed, desire, hurt, endorsement, curse. I'll say it first, I'm poor as a horse with a flower in its purse, and where are you? You are entertained by the bargain, half drunk, self-disdain, liquid like paint, spilling into the margin. A Barnett Newman, Francis Bacon, or Elaine de Kooning, of earthly ensign, I, Totoquihuatzli, maligned. I'll say it first, I'm poor as a flower, intermittently consented sight of itself. Imagine yourself in a soap apple, squished in its whorled buttonhole, dappled with its tinctured principle, its branches peopled with Quetzal's eagle and Christianly owl. How will you make your way back from that to the valley of Anahuac? You're singing there today, but even the trace of your jingle this way is marked by a tingle of being somewhat unaware. You are born there, shine there, and somehow your mind there is caught still in the cavernous, winding, impersonal grapple of the soap apple that ensanguines there. You may have noticed that there's a Tudorish Elizabethan sound to these things, right? Trying to approximate the soundscape, mid-16th century in English, translating context, not just content. All the notes in the poem are also rhymed. Right? Every time I make a note, like on the side, I rhyme the note too. So this is the annotation for this poem. NB. Back then, it was not a valley. The Valley of Mexico wasn't a valley, it was a basin, right? Back then, it was not a valley, but a confluence of streams, large catchment, salt, cut with fresh gleam, not always drinkable, until Chimalpopoca built the aqueduct at Chapultepec, an inspired advancement. Later, Chimalpopoca's mandate to Netzahualpili's father, Netzahualcoyote, build the dikes, divide the waters. Hence the flowing fields, raising yields from twice a year to upwards of 6, aquaponics, chinampas. And the last one now. 35. Is it peremptory to speak in prophecy today? If so, why seek ye still blood relation and musical annotation, i.e. the work of poetry? The light of heaven is spread as to enhearten, and still today there are those who say the earth belongs to us, symphilis, rupestrian. It is one thing to live in a cave, another to enslave the light of life's diction to cavernous convictions. They say that this skin gives special dispensation. Okay, then burnish what blood you have. Cantar S. Cantar S, tar S, cantar S, tar S, can S, cantar, es cantares, cantares.
Keep it going for Edgar Garcia. Saved up all your claps for the end. Yeah, you're right. We have another wonderful poet coming up next. Take that out of there. Jose Luis Moctezuma is a xicano poet, essayist, and researcher. He holds a PhD in English from the University of Chicago. His poetry and criticism have been published or are forthcoming in Postmodern Culture, Peripheries, Modernism, Modernity, Fence, Jacket 2, Chicago Review, and elsewhere. His chapbook, Spring Tlaloc Seance, was published by Projective Industries in January 2016. His first full-length book, Place Discipline, was published by Omnidawn in October 2018. Place Discipline was selected by Myung Mi Kim as the winner of the 2017 Omnidawn First or Second Poetry Book Prize. His second book, Black Box Syndrome, was published by Omnidawn this past December. In this book, which he'll read from tonight, these hexagrammatic lyrics are black boxes that work through the cultural mathematics that capitalism posits. When we are ejected at the other side after the poem, we may conclude some dividends and remainders of that mathematics. There is hyper-contemporary materiality in the diction of these poems. They offer us a raw perceptual newness that rips the rose-colored lenses of empire off our human, societal, and cultural interactions. A flame, one could say, so we can confront the circuitry of faux techno-futurist existences. This new wilding is not so much transhumanist, but a post-biological oscillating between forethought and afterthought, which leads to a distillation of ideological origins and outcomes. These poems are also accelerants, not towards systemic destructions. Our society is good enough at that on our own. These poems accelerate us toward a secular confrontation with subjectivity. Jose Luis knows exactly what he's doing in Black Box Syndrome and states this with stunning clarity in the afterword. I encourage you to buy the book tonight, read it, read the afterword, then read the book again, not because you need the afterword to comprehend it, but because the book is that damn good. Please welcome to the Splice stage, Jose Luis Moctezuma.
Thank you so much for that, Sean. Thank you, Henry, Rodrigo, and the Splice crew for having us here. It's awesome there's a long history between Edgar and me. We've friends forever, since high school, so it's great to always find through poetry the channels that can sort of bridge our dialogue together, and this is another wonderful stage to be in. So I'm going to read from this new book, Black Box Syndrome, but before I do that, I'm going to read a poem that is kind of like a pre-black boxy type of poem where I was thinking a lot about black boxes. It's called CCTV. It was a collaborative poem that I did for the Lit Loose Festival, which is staged every year in Chicago and in La Ciudad de Mexico, and they do it in the fall and then in the spring in Mexico. And I did it with a fantastic Mexican visual artist by the name of Chantal Peñalosa, who is just incredible. Google her work. She has exhibits all over the place. It was a privilege to work with her. I'm not going to read her sections. I'll read just my sections. But this poem is called CCTV. Wearing a brown unisex apron, the hands that pertain to the arm, and the arms that belong to the shoulders, and the shoulders that weave the delicate fabric of nerves and arteries and musculature, what we call the mind or the self, or the voice that speaks to you within this system of cloud drift and gesture, assembles and then polishes a series of knives, forks, spoons, arranged on a table, face concealed. The light stores up the color, and a wave crash of gray static freezes everything except a circumflex and a ternum. The angle of repose for the eye deranges a movement where the hand and the heart hold the metal, invisible to the camera's caduceus, and its repetitions announce an unsuturing of labor from its placement. This is a quote. They believed that the worst punishment imaginable was a bullshit job, end quote. A hillside does not have a job, but what does it do? The grass serenading the hillside does not have a job, so what does it do? The flies leaping in the shit-stained grass in the field do not have a job, but what do they do? The fingers dancing do not have a job, so what do they do? What is the role of a hand when the rest of the body is performing a job? What does the body know of the hand when it falls asleep on the clock? Sisyphus does not have a job, so what does he do? What did he do to deserve this? I write letters to everyone I know. A letter to my manager, a letter to my neighbor's dog, a letter to the grate at the end of the door, a letter to my primos across the border, a letter to the myopic tecolotes who patiently wait for the lighthouse to burn down, a letter to the grasses in the earth's mouth and the mushrooms and the mosses, a letter to the rust that can't sit still in the chromatisms of a chair that sits in the rain and sits still, a letter to the Pentagon in the heart of the inner country, a letter to ward off the 9 eyes of Google, a letter that represents the alchemy of consonants but never the vowels, a letter that rewards long penitence after much degradation and sweat, a letter to the bottles of salt carefully positioned to mimic coastal erosion, a letter for the left hand who writes to the right hand of what happens on the other side of the screen that divides the body from its cloud of wires and skin. The network is a series of cameras and a closed-circuit telepathy. The television in the mind erects a structure of feeling. The network is a series of empty gestures in a black box. The border is a series of plateaus in which we intensify and speak in tongues. The network is a refraction in the glass that slices the eye open. The camera is a room inside a stanza, inside a poem, inside a box, inside a bottle. The network is a series of views of the end of the world. A view of Antwerp awash in its grime and mercury. A view of several large cranes and shipyards and maybe a crack pipe. A view of the global city. A view of merchants and tradesmen and longue durée economics and maybe a syringe. A view of a book written by Roberto Bolaño in 1980. A view of diamonds in the river Scheldt. A diamond sea, a view of. A view of not one sea, the North Sea, but many seas. A view of diamonds, hence the Diamond Sutra. A view of world systems theory. A view of Subhuti respectfully asking the Buddha if he would like Dunkin' Donuts. A view of diamonds being dunked into a pool of blood in slow motion for a music video. A view of the World Bank from the banks of Port-au-Prince. A view of the age of explorations. A view of broken factory windows because they're always broken. A view of forked-tongued white men in armor bearing contracts. A view of contractual relations in the Antwerp of the 1600s. A view of someone lying completely, utterly still in a cage. A view of several cages, empty. A view of someone else in a cage who's looking at the camera. A view of the ever-given, terminally stuck in the evergreen waters of the Suez Canal from the satellites of Antwerp's business district. A view of the evergrande liquidity crisis from the living room of a signorin. A view of hands in vinyl gloves, carefully fabricating time, one brushstroke at a time. The hand is no longer free from the organs and their conspiracy. My body, like a dandelion, grows in the crevice of someone else's vision. My tremulous soul, like a fly wavering in its inertia, can find no signal in the noise of the flesh or the poisoned air. And yet I resume my work, this aimless labor at reconstructing time. I polish the spoons and see my face in them, one after another, one after another, one after another. Dear managers of human arrangement, I'm writing to report that inside the onion, all the constructs of labor rest concealed, like the blade sleeping inside a knife at vanishing point. Inside the worker, a salt accrues and builds up until it spills out at the moment an onion is bladed open. Inside time are all the rudiments of labor: a worker, a rust-worn onion, a knife all blade, glass bottles pregnant with salt and tears and the effort to keep from vanishing. I'm going to read just one more piece from the chapbook from the olden days, Spring Tlaloc Seance, and this is called Cantinflas en Gringolandia. This is based on a John Ashbery poem, Daffy Duck in Hollywood. So, I don't remember why. I remember there was a colleague of mine at the time was talking about how just incredible virtuosity that poem was, and I realized with a title like that, why had I never read it? And so I read it, and somehow it really did kind of influence me. So here we go. And this is based on the famous Mexican chaplain, if you will, Cantinflas. Algo extraño me atraviesa. Algo extraño me atraviesa. Algo extraño me atraviesa. Tragic comedy bristles upper lip, and crepuscular Cristo Redentor wafts contagious across violet garpas, seizured and razored in data, and switchblade belado clips, funeral parade of dahlias, arched backs of sweating men, a liquor tongue steadied and pillared by brie and primordialisms and Pemex, of what Lazarus gave cognate peons. Ahí está el detalle. Brown pride isn't Monsieur Moreno cantinfleando. It's this obsequious rust grown inverse as he slurps bread slop and migas in saltine ecstasies, and the children are crying out, Águila o sol, sun or eagle, plume devil crackling in fulgent detail, optic distance at a premium. No, not mestizos, comings and goings more like, mutterings, splatterings, pulque backwash, lack of toiletries or scenography, in which case a spellbound counter-ensemble of tongues forked, funereal, featureless, a future race unspeeched, except in masked contortions, Falstaffian devices, Creole binaries. Every lunatic has an inner self-programming, hunger. A stainless Quixote, for example, a chill wretch mastering vernaculars like a surgeon masters nervous systems. Somos lo que somos. Calvinize restraints of erosion, appropriate his white fever for book-bound contusions. Who gives a damn about Amadis or what gringos know of Looney Tunes if they're in conspiracy with practice nations or the 140 days of Belgravia or the 80 days it requires to circumnavigate a globe of filmic size, green and innatured and utopic, capacious of comic passe-partout, who coordinate their majesty's foggy notions with Adlerian obeisance. No se dice idioma, se dice idioma de la raíz latina. Pues, yo no hablo de esa raíz, soy portero. Hablo de la raíz india, por eso digo idioma. What is grammar? What is speaking? What is this jaundiced shade at the corner of sight? Neither blood nor hourglass drip, this long take close-up creeping over me, gripped as I am to draw unawareness outward and splay gesture for roving whir, uproots what gabardine can speak to race. Por raza hablará espíritu, is the pinched mouth of a slight feline man who once ran office for president of electrical tramps and syndicates, our only acknowledging of that color enmeshed in Indian blood. No. We're othered in othering, whether we sag or belt, whether we lisp idioms by stage light or choreograph bodies inflated by wrath and poverty and angelic sweat. We are who we are, cosmic, violable, combinatory hazards of hybrid. I'm really glad that the book was described to you, because I was going to read a longish the afterword itself, but now thankfully I don't have to read it. So you all know what this is about. Black box syndrome is about black boxes. It was based on the I Ching. It's I keep calling it, as trite as it sounds, a pandemic book. I did write it during the pandemic, where I was teaching. I think the origin story is that I was teaching Zoom, as I'm sure some of you in academia were doing at that time. And many students at that time didn't turn on their cameras. So you would literally just have nothing but black boxes, right? And the occasional one student who would be the one who would normally sit in the front of the class and would very virtuously turn on their camera. And it was like, wow, that one camera turned on, it's like a ray of sunshine. It's weird. So the book kind of started that way. It got a lot weirder than that, which I'm not going to bore you with, but I'm going to go backwards actually with that poem that kick-started that image. By the way, these poems are also shaped, they're 6-line poems shaped in the hexagrams of the I Ching. So they're relatively short. Not faces, but black boxes. I permit them anonymity, and I get strong feedback that way. I allow their voices to soak through. I request nothing but attention when I speak, so that it seems I speak alone, as if only to myself. But sometimes a camera turns on, and I'm startled to find that I'm not alone, that the world continues beyond the box, that it stretches out into human form, that it listens. And even when the box closes and I'm left alone with someone else's thoughts, I do not stir or make noise. I listen to dark water run behind the walls, and below me the Urkelplod lies dormant, waiting for the next epoch to arrive, the antenna trees buzzing with cormorants. There are small things which escape our attention and lie still. Black mold in the cellar, pogonip in the forest, rats in the cage. I speak with the pigs and the fishes. I open my heart to them and lay bare the inner truths that disassemble me at night and reassemble me at daybreak when there's no box, and I see only skyward, the cranes flying toward the east, and white eggs hatching in the wake of perfect quietude, like the silence of God when he naps. My heart is full when I leave it out, and the rain collects, and I drink deep. Pandemonium is a film by William Blake about the coming of the machine. Or was it the night mail? In evening tide, when church bells vanish like a forest fire that leaps into the lake and swims. Our current philosophy of necrophilia relies on algorithms that reanimate the dead in holograms required to perform 1990s hits. We lie between Prometheus and Epimetheus, as sterile as tears in rain. A dream of Daedalus in the end cancels out the dooms of Icarus. I was told once that everything dissipates no matter how darkened the heart of the box may be. There is nothing to fear in the death posture. The entropic lettering of my name and my organs speak out against the empires of permanence, the flippant automatisms that fluid lock us and lengthen our brain vats. The bombs burst to unleash. Today they've released me at last. I'm tasked with bookkeeping. The Library of Babel contains books that all speak of the black cube. The world, the flesh, and the devil are all one in paradise, as the angels, a future feeling in our throats, rendering under Bonaparte the good bits, the fatty acids, the stench of skin that soothes the soul, reminders of the old world, the old sex, while we interzone in ecstasy. The wind bloweth where it listeth, sourceless, as what occurs in black box. System Analyse und Programmentwicklung supplies supply chain cockpits, cloud-based. The monitors stylize the time horizons for a hotel suite of operations running the gamut from defecation to waste management, to local vort economies such as faster one-click purchase of assault rifles for all your hunting proclivities, and schizo-patriotic individuation. Coronavirus roves the spaceways, and we are its inhabitants in this black box they call Sein und Zeit. Our fragrant breath contaminates the dialectical channels with objective correlatives or prosthetic pathos. Death does not let me go. It warns me that it has hacked my smartphone. From its shining distance, such things are possible. Plastic flowers, astroturf, nomadic Tamagotchi Roombas in the wild. The assassins believe in the rights of man. Forsooth, they've invented the body. So why not push this straw man before me as a conviction procedure alongside puppet shows of abundance? But all things are in abundance. Look around you. All things are speaking to you from the inner core of Deolia, the heart of a cannulated cow who listens to the rumblings of its intestinal truth. They warn me that a magnetic fluid-impregnated Russian comes armed with an arsenal of white magic tricks dubbed Cambridge Analytica and assorted psyops and brain sayings that will bring certain nations into reflexive order. They call speculative realism or an anti-Semitism that we shall title a physics of the AI, privileging the mechanical bride over and against her suitors. What the fuck were they anyway? The supply chain is an allegory for the ways the black box breaks down our collective fantasies concerning the borderlands and its intangible affects. There is no here and there is no there. There are no states which are united in us or in the language we speak. There is no identity crisis other than the dark core of HMM Algeciras, ambling blindly along the mystic canals of Panama in search of interval. Okay, I'm gonna end with one last poem. And this is a poem that I read it just came to me and it occurred to me. I read this in Mexico City, and we were talking about Mexico City and with some friends here, and I just thought, I remember for some reason, I just had a vivid memory of reading this poem. And it's a poem actually that I have to thank Edgar, my brother, for. He introduced to me a work by George Hunt called I Desire to Learn the Ways of the Shaman. And this poem was kind of like my getting to know the sort of indigenous communities of the Pacific Northwest, their rituals and whatnot. And George Hunt was from that. And he wrote this interesting book where he, I believe, wanted to dispel what shamanism was, and eventually in trying to practice it was sort of came into the conviction, right, of how it's of how it works. That it works. Inside the metaphysic cave where darkness feeds on us, and magic lanterns speak of platonic entrapments, which catch you and fling you into horrendous suns blinded by logocentrism. Figures carved in sound and rivered in foul speech rush by. Erase the edgework of our craft, blur our knowledged faces into fine dust, and our lovelinesses melt away in the unsounded depth. Mastery is Galatian or otherwise, purged and consumed like flesh in the wake of evening alliances. Fall away in thrush fire. They aren't statues nor totems, those eye lines, which invent our galleries and shine on the pathways of shared breath. Across chance horizons drawn upward to a sudden burst of hemlock and its neighboring silence of enraptured owls, those who bridge the ceiling cloud to its ground. They paint the stars electrical and weave strings on the arc of Lyra. Nor is the unkindness of ravens a construct of decomposed systems, a myth disassembled to signage or psychology. The weight defies you and holds your irises up as a bell on gold chain does, specks of ravished pollen and disordered light. A disappearance of calloused hands into card deck, carpet into figure, clock face into grief, of Heinz gods into refrigerator repairmen. The dinosaur disappears into a hiss of black swans, and the magpie hibernates in the skin of a journalist who wagers that the next election will end in failure, a failure of the state, but not the failure of the body, whose taxidermy might save us from embarrassment in the museums of an alien anthropology. I once ate of human form, and this person I was in the days of metaphysical folly, outside the body while in the body, was a brown bear in love with the ways of bipedal life, and in love with industries of thoughtful meat, secretly in love with headless organisms who channeled their rage through E. coli and protozoa. Colonial life forms, bacterial gated communities, a loveliness of thread suns stitched into fabric as sunspots are stitched into baked skin. To be beast enough to read scripts on such luminous surfaces, the white crest of a wave collapsed on whale hump, evaporated in a swoon of plankton. The fibers of wood when I lick its honeyed lacquer in a fever of diabetic discomposure. The bees who puncture my wool and waltz me toward slow death in the warm, red-dotted pores that suck in their fuzzy, incandescent siren. The eidolon that rings in the eagle's lensed roam, which eats of the image before it eats of the torn viscera of a dormouse. Like these, I am dispassionate, indifferent, as a god is in the cud of regurgitated oilseed and roughage in the mouth of Kadmarhenu. And my brain runs wild in the aftergrowth of jungle fire, cannibalizing the remains of my brown kindred in the stomachs of white language, whose digestion puppet shaped in the crude form of men grown mad from colonial ennui. Northern bison gesticulate while I hunt the ways of magic on the periphery of their lettered vision. Their tracks glow in a fire whose intention lies behind intention itself, what is called communitas, the instinct for reason's inordinate unreason, in a chaos of kinship within dietary regimes, revolutionary cannibalism, or sacral cannibalism, or cultural cannibalism, or vulgar cannibalism, or bourgeois cannibalism. The fulfillment of a wish image and a consumption of parts to a missing whole, the parts of a butchered hog, parts of a Rolex wristwatch, parts of a case file titled The Blue Rose of Novalis, parts of a magnolia quartered in pistil, stamen, calyx, and corolla, parts of speech in Caliban's mastery of Egyptian curses, or his Creole eye long on the throat of delectable Dutchmen, whose language he'll feast on under Baroque altars rendered holy by metamorphosis of blood into wine, Tonantzin into Guadalupe, corn gods into Monsanto, conquest into cuisine and tourism. I tried to live among the red ants, but they kicked me out. Unclean as I was, I wash in the cultures of the indeterminate. I was not a good worker. I was not write or die. I was not scribbling epistles, and I did not beautify the names of things with Latin umbrage. I mixed the measurements. I growled when the undertow came for my feet, and then my legs, and afterward, my velocity. I sent up a lament to them, a poem that begins with A and ends in beloved. And I saw her piecing together the long eyebrows of a brother spirit, a waxen figure lifted higher than heaven's forehead. The red cedar was on her brow, blackened in charcoal, and I fell down into my slumber as the owl falls down into the resistance of its prey, its much loved, its cherished. And I sank below the whole of its multitude and mixed with the warm dirt and the mucus of the earth, of what contains all the beasts and yet negates them, as the night negates a field of cows munching soundlessly on the grass, in which all things are black and pure, purer than the mustard seed dreaming of the mountain's breast at dawn's climax. The animals are calling us. Our tongues are enmeshed in river speak, and I wait for you as the crow waits for lustrous carrion on the roadways, at the threshold between the stone's soft gaze and the red cedar distances. Thank you.
Keep it going. For Edgar Garcia and Jose Luis Moctezuma. Oh my gods. That's how you start season 3. Unbelievable. Now, all right, here we go. Thank you for not making me a sensationalist when I said 2 of the greatest living anti-colonial poets right now. All right, so thank you so much for coming. We're wrapped here. We have books for sale, right? We have Black Box Syndrome for sale. That's going to sell out quick, so get in line. And then just to let you know, so this is season 3. We're going to keep it going. We got a show next month in February. I wanted to remind y'all, I should do this more. If you're not on the mailing list for us, we send out a reminder that this is happening a week before. So come and see me and give me your email if you want to be on that list. It's just a good reminder, things slip our mind. Be sure to tip Olivia behind the bar, our bartender, doing the gods' work. There you go. And next month is February 17th. We have New Orleans' own gentle and kind powerhouse, Cameron Lovejoy, right there in the back. And be pairing with Alicia Wright, who will be coming in. And now that you know that I'm not a sensationalist, when I drop terms like greatest, I would say damn near the ghost reincarnate of a young C.D. Wright, Alicia Wright. No relation, spelled the same, but really. So you got to come and see it. It's going to be amazing. Thank you as always for coming out. And yeah, this is season 3. Here we go. All right.